Hey Gen Science, we're in Module 1, the first half, so Part 1, History of Science. And I would love to know if there was anything that you found interesting or noteworthy. You could write it in your lab notebooks if you'd like. I know I personally have always been drawn to Egyptian culture, so I enjoyed the reading about Imhotep and how he was a worldwide known healing doctor, and the use of all these ancient cultures of using trial and error to come up with healing methods with the poppy plants and moldy bread, and then even things like papyrus, the making a paper to be able to write down scientific knowledge or healing knowledge. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. But as your textbook states, that science really is not just necessarily trial and error. It's taking observable facts and turning those facts into laws. So while these ancient cultures had amazing discoveries, it wasn't necessarily science by this definition. And that kind of leads us to our first lesson of science, which is that science really depends on the culture and the government of the time. And the culture and the government of that time was about healing methods and kind of more inventions such as the papyrus paper. Another time that we see culture and the government dictating science is later in the chapter, in 500 to 1000 AD. Does anybody remember? In the Dark Ages, we have the alchemist. And do you remember what they did? They were trying to take things like lead, inexpensive, and turn it into gold. They had observed chemical reactions occur and seen things change. So they thought, well, maybe we can do that with inexpensive material and turn it into something more valuable like gold. So at that time, lesson number 1, culture and governments was looking toward kind of money making. So we have trial and error, healing, inventions, and then the kind of similar with the alchemists much later in the AD in the darker ages. So that's lesson 1 of science. Lesson 2, we have kind of a science teamwork. Do you remember any of kind of the teamwork, who built on who? It's you learned a lot just in this first half. We have the Greeks are typically considered the first true scientists in that taking observable facts and turning it into laws. So we have Thales, and these names are so hard for me to say, Anaximander, Anaximenes. They kind of had different areas of study, but again, trying to take observable facts and turning it into laws. And even though they made mistakes, their mistakes actually even helped scientists down the road, like Lysippus and Democritus, come up with the theory that all matter is made of atoms. And we now know that is true. And they made mistakes in their theories, but still, their theories were starting points, or their hypotheses were starting points to just continue science down the road, continue observing facts and turning it into natural laws. So that's lesson number 2, this science teamwork and building upon each other. More Greek scientists. We have Aristotle and Ptolemy bring us to our third lesson of science, that science should be based on evidence only, not on who is presenting the information or where the information might benefit. We have Aristotle, brilliant. He came up with a classification for living things, the first to come up with classification of plants and animals. Many brilliant things, but he came up with the idea of spontaneous generation, and it was just believed because, well, Aristotle said it. Spontaneous generation do you remember what it is? Yeah, so spontaneous, kind of like out of nowhere, generation, creation. So living out of non-living. And through things that they observed, they thought, well, this could be happening. But we now know that living only comes from living. But it was believed for a long period of time because Aristotle said it. Ptolemy, similar, Again, good scientist, but he came up with the geocentric system, that the Earth was the center of the solar system and everything orbited around the Earth. He thought his observations, along with the Bible, alluded to that. And it was believed and pushed by the church for a long period of time, even after other scientists started showing that's not what the evidence shows. But that lesson number 3 is you can't go with science or just based off of because somebody smart said it. It has to be evidence-based. Kind of going back to the Dark Ages with the alchemists, thankfully we did get out of that, and science progressed, and Christianity, did it help or hinder? Christianity helped bring the Dark Ages, progress science later on. So even though the church stumbled in some ways with the geocentric system, Christianity also helped. And do you know how? Do you think Christianity fits with science? Tell us how. We have a Grosseteste going with the idea that science picked up steam and started progressing past these dark ages. We have Robert Grosseteste and Roger Bacon, who kind of gets credit, but Robert Grosseteste actually is considered like the father of the scientific method. So again, we get to that observation all the way to an actual knowledge of the natural world around us, as opposed to just the trial and error. So all of this information kind of